Plywood is a great material for building projects like the step-back cupboard we're creating, or for things like chests, bookcases, and dressers that are essentially big boxes. Instead of having to put a bunch of narrow boards together, you can break a plywood sheet down into the large panels that are perfect for these box-style projects. Now, a full-size sheet of plywood is big and heavy, but cutting it doesn't have to be a challenge. A great trick is to make a support system like this. It's just 2x4s that are in this case suspended between a Kreg track horse and a Kreg mobile project center. The 2x4s build a strong support, and it also holds the sheet at a height that's very comfortable, so I can cut without having to bend over or be awkwardly working my way around the sheet. Plus, the support helps hold the plywood in position as I'm cutting, and it'll keep the pieces that I cut off from dropping. So it's a really great way to make cutting plywood a whole lot easier. A circular saw is the tool of choice for cutting plywood. But before you grab your saw and start cutting, here's a good idea. Circular saws come with a blade that's made for making fast cuts in framing lumber. Take that blade out and replace it with a blade that's made for cutting plywood. It has more teeth that are also smaller, so it'll take a smaller bite and make a smoother, cleaner cut. Once you have a blade installed, there's one more thing you need to do, and that's adjust your saw for the correct depth of cut. Now, a circular saw will cut all the way through a 2x4, but we don't need it to cut that deep for this 3/4 inch plywood. So, of course, make sure your saw is unplugged before you make any setup changes, and then check the cutting depth. Every saw is a little bit different to adjust, but in the long run, you want to end up with the blade depth, so it's just about 1/8 of an inch below the thickness of your plywood. That way, you'll get a nice clean cut, the saw won't have to work any harder than it needs to, and you won't cut too far into your support grid. So with those things done, you're ready to cut. Supporting your plywood sheet well and setting up your saw correctly will help you cut more safely and more easily, but it won't necessarily help you cut straight. Usually when you're cutting plywood, you draw a long layout line and then try to guide the saw along and eyeball that line, so you're trying to keep the saw straight and keep the cut smooth and make sure you're accurate all at once, and that's just too many things to think about. The solution is to use a saw guide, and there's a couple types available. This one attaches to the saw, and you can adjust the setting, and then the edge guide follows along the edge of the sheet. This one uses a long guide rail that you can place wherever you need it on the sheet, and then the saw rides right on top to make a nice straight cut. With either of these types of guides, you'll get a much better result, a smoother, cleaner cut, and you don't have to worry about trying to keep the saw straight. With the rip cut, you can lock in the measurement that you want. Then hold the edge guide against the edge of the sheet. Push the saw along with one hand while you hold the edge guide with your other hand. That'll guide the saw for a nice straight cut. With the accu-cut, first make a couple of marks where you want to cut. Then align the edge of the anti-chip strip with your marks. As you cut, the anti-slip surface keeps the accu-cut guide rail from moving, and the chip strips produce a smooth, clean cut.